Hey, y'all, I'm LaToya Drake with the Nutrition Education Program with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service, and I'm here at the beautiful Allen County Scottsville Extension Office, and we're making our recipe of the month, and this month we're making a kale and potato soup. So this is a plated up Kentucky Proud recipe, and right now onions are in season, so this is a great recipe to use those in-season onions. Onions are in season from January to March, and also through July through September. You know, in Kentucky and Tennessee, when folks have hoop houses or greenhouses, they can extend that growing season, and they can be in season pretty much all year round. You know, onions are going to give a great flavor profile. They're in the holy trinity of flavors with that celery and green peppers and onions. So this recipe is a non-traditional potato soup. It's got lots of hearty kale, it's got chicken, and we're going to make it now. It calls for 4 teaspoons of olive oil. Let's go ahead and put this in our hot pan. And the ancestors are going to tell me when I get there, and I did. That's 4 teaspoons because I said so. So we also have the yellow onion, and this is going to be a whole chopped yellow onion, about that size too. Here we go. So olive oil, onion, garlic. And like when I'm browning any kind of onion, I like to give it a little color, right? Because that color is caramelization, right? And so that's going to give it some extra flavor. And you need to be careful with garlic when you're browning it because it has the tendency to burn and it's going to be extra too flavorful. So you just want to watch that. Let's get this hot, get these onions, some color on them. So 3 cloves of garlic, 1 chopped onion, 4 teaspoons of olive oil is what we have so far. Once this cooks a bit, we're going to add a box of low sodium, reduced sodium chicken broth. And I got the cheap version because it's going to work the same. So that's 48 ounces, the larger box of chicken broth. So then you're going to have 6 red potatoes. And remember when you cut potatoes, you might want to cut them at the time you're cooking. I cut these a little early and prep them, and they're going to brown a little bit, but they're still going to taste just fine. And we have half a cup of chopped carrots and 4 cups of shredded kale. Also, we've got about a half a pound of chicken, and about a half a pound of chicken is like a large chicken breast. And I threw that in the air fryer this morning at my house to get that done real quick, but you could also boil that. You could cook that in the oven. You could cook that on the stove, and however you want to do that to get that chicken shredded. I just was not trying to spend a lot of time doing that, so we got it done in the air fryer. In addition to the chicken, it's going to call for some black pepper. It doesn't call for any salt, but we're going to add some to taste because we are in the South and we need a little bit of salt for that flavor, right? So in this large pan, I just am sauteing my onions, getting those flavorful, browning those up. And then I'm going to add the chicken broth, the potatoes, and the carrots, and we're going to cover it and let it boil a little bit. Let's get this going. So onions are going to be pretty nutrient dense, and they're going to have lots of flavor, and they're going to add flavor to a variety of dishes. You know, some people don't like onions, some people like them cooked. I like onions any kind of way depending on the dish. And you really want to get them translucent to brown, right? I like to have a little burnt pieces on there to give it that extra flavor. So this recipe is going to have about 270 calories, 5 grams of fat, 1 gram of saturated fat, 25 milligrams of cholesterol, and 210 milligrams of sodium, 43 grams of carbohydrate, and 5 grams of fiber, 15 grams of protein, right? And it's going to serve about 6 folks, a cup and a half a serving. So about a bowl. You know, I'll probably eat this for dinner. I'm not even going to lie. We're not going to waste any food. What I would pair with this is like a funeral sandwich or some cornbread. You know, we call them funeral sandwiches down here, but the little Hawaiian buns with the meat and cheese that you cook in the oven. Be super tasty. If you want to do something more healthy, you might want to pair this with a salad. But we got some greens in this too. So onions have 32 calories per half a cup serving. So they're super low in calories, and they're going to have some nutrients in them. They have about a 1/5 of the vitamin C that you need in the entire day in an onion. Who would have thought that? We always think of vitamin C in oranges, but onions are going to have vitamin C too. Additionally, bell peppers have a lot of vitamin C, so that's something to consider. Onions have antioxidants, and they have sulfur-containing compounds, which is something you should be careful of if you have issues with FODMAPs. Those are those sugars that our bacteria in our gut like a lot, so they're going to eat those all up, and they can cause us to have a little gas, so we want to be careful with that. And if you have issues with that, you might want to avoid onions in large amounts, right? So these onions and this garlic are starting to smell, and we want to get this done. So we're going to go ahead and add our box of low sodium chicken broth, and I'm going to make a mess because that's what I do. So we got the chicken broth and we got the mess. We want this to get boiling too, because we're going to put in the potatoes, put in the carrots, and we're going to bring it all to a boil. And then we're going to cover that and we're going to cook it for a bit. So I don't splash myself, I'm going to do this because I like to make a mess. And carrots. Cover that, get that boiling. Wipe this up with this paper towel that fell from the sky. All right, y'all, so we've got our potatoes, our carrots, our onions, our garlic. We're going to bring this to a boil. But while we do this, let's have a conversation. And when we do bring this to a boil, we want to reduce our heat and simmer it for another 20 minutes. And then we'll add the chicken and the kale after that cooks, because we want those potatoes and those carrots, those root vegetables, to get soft, because those, you know, we don't want to have raw potatoes and raw carrots in our soup. And unfortunately, well, not fortunately, the weather's been cold, so this is a perfect dish for soup season, right? Because we're still in soup season. And onions are going to provide flavor and health-promoting phytonutrients. You want to select an onion that is firm, right? That doesn't have any signs of any mold or any soft tissues. You want it to look nice from the outside. And you don't want to have any blemishes. Onions should have little to no scent. If they're smelling real strong, they could have some rotting issues, so you want to check that out. And you want to store onions until they're washed and prepped. You want to store them whole in a cool, dark place, right? Once you cut them and you chop them, you can store those onions in the refrigerator. If you peel an onion, you can store that in the refrigerator too, and that's going to keep for about 3 days. Something good about onions, you can also, got my notes there, you can freeze onions, and that's something to consider too. But when you do freeze them, you don't have to blanch them, but you do have to chop them up, and you can either dry freeze them or you can tray pack them. If you dry freeze them, you want to have them all chopped and just put them in a bag chop like that and throw them in the freezer. If you tray freeze them, you want to put some parchment paper or wax paper on a tray and freeze those onion chops in a single layer, and then once they're frozen, dump them in a bag. Frozen onions are going to last us about 8 months in the refrigerator or in the freezer. And just to put that out there, things in the freezer are going to last indefinitely. They're going to be safe for you to eat indefinitely. They just might not taste as good. So, but you want to use them for best flavor within 8 months. And you want to make sure that you're storing them in freezer safe materials, right? You want to use your freezer bags. You want to use glass that's freezer safe or plastic that's freezer safe, right? To keep that locked in. So freezing it, you can refrigerate them, and you can do that with any types of onions that you have, because onions range in variety, and that variety is going to influence their flavor. Here, as you saw, we used a yellow onion. You can also use a white onion, and white onions are really typical in Mexican flavors, right? When you have that salsa and cilantro together. That's going to be typical in that. You can use red onions, and we use red onions a lot in salads, right? You can cook all of those. The yellow onions are going to be a bit sweeter, and they're going to be best for caramelizing, and they'll get sweet, and they'll go on like a hamburger or something. Because you can cook onions so many different types of ways. And speaking of onions too, green onions. And no matter the size of an onion, they're pretty much in the same family. It's just when they're picked, when they're processed is what we call them. You know, smaller onions are called spring onions or shallots or those kind of things. They're going to have similar flavors, but the smaller they are, they're going to be milder. I love green onions, the whites of those to cook with, And the greens of those you're going to put on top of things like your salads and your meats and things. But those whites you can cook in like a pasta sauce, and it's going to give it a nice mild flavor. So you can caramelize your onions, you can grill your onions, and you can eat your onions raw. You can also saute your onions, and you can steam your onions, and you can roast your onions. You can cook onions all different types of way, right? And roast them as well, and preserve them. And we already talked a bit about how you can freeze those onions. And for additional food preservation tips, you want to reach out to your local county extension office, whether that be in Kentucky or Tennessee. They're going to have the best research-backed information to give you what you need to make sure that you're preserving food safely, right? We can see a lot of things on the TikTok and the internet, but that might not be safe. So you want to reach out to your extension office to get those safe ways. Tips for cooking with onions. Onions eaten raw or cooked, we want to remove the outer layer. We don't want to eat the skin, unless you do, and that's on you, but that sounds just terrible to me. But you want to remove that outer layer. You want to, if you want to avoid crying, put it in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes before you get cutting, and this is going to help get some of that scent down so that you're not just weeping as you cut the onion. And then other facts about onions, we know that they're a bulb vegetable, and we're still not boiling. Get us there so we can get this cooked. And I was sure to heat the pot ahead of the time, because it's so different cooking on a stove that's not yours at home. But this is a nice stove. It's getting there, it's starting to go. So they're a bulb vegetable. We know they're going to grow similarly to garlic and onions, right? And they're also closely related to scallions and shallots and leeks. They're commonly used for flavoring in a side dish, and they're a staple in many cuisines, right? We talked about them being important in the Holy Trinity, in the Louisiana Holy Trinity, and also in Mexican dishes, but they're a part of every dish in cultures around the world. You know, even in the South, they're great in our pinto beans, right? Those are flavoring in our pinto beans and our greens. They're just going to provide a big punch of flavor. So we are going to let this soup boil, and then we're going to reduce it to simmer for 20 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll check it out, and we'll add the chicken and the kale. So here it is now, and we're going to bring it to a boil, and we're going to reduce it and simmer it for 20 minutes, and we'll get back with you and add that stuff. All right, y'all, so we're back, and we have had our potatoes and our carrots and our onions and our garlic and our chicken broth boiling. It was simmering for about 20 minutes. Now it's time to add our kale and our chicken. So we're going to add our kale in, and this is about 4 cups of kale. Lots of kale. Lots of kale. I love kale. Kale is in the family of broccoli, and many people don't realize that. Let's mix this all up. And we'll add the rest of that too. The full 4 cups. This is so pretty and colorful. It's going to be, looks like our potatoes are pretty soft. I guess once that finishes boiling, they'll be ready. Okay, there's our 4 cups of kale. And then about our half a pound of chicken, which was 1 large chicken breast. So what we're going to do is get this boiling again and let it simmer for another 15 minutes. And then this hearty soup will be done, and we'll check it out. All right, we're back with our completed kale and potato soup. Super colorful. These carrots and potatoes, they look tender and ready to go. And this recipe is a part of our Plate It Up Kentucky Proud collection, and it's available at plateitup.ca.uky.edu. So plateitup.ca.uky.edu. And you can also find this website at playandeatmove.com under kale and potato soup, or you can reach out to the Allen County Extension Office, or you can reach out to Barry Hyatt at barry.hyatt@nctc.com. So that recipe is going to be available for you in all of those different ways. And check it out and plate it up Kentucky Proud.